recognize myself. To start out, just so I have a situational awareness of what is happening on the ground in Gaza, according to my briefings, the IDF, that is the Israeli military forces, are beginning to circle Gaza City in a very slow and determined effort to eventually bring Hamas out of the tunnels, and that a barrier or a blocking position is being built in the center of Gaza, a very narrow strip, to then eventually turn southern Gaza into a humanitarian zone. The Rafah gate is open. About 100 trucks are going in with food, water, and medicine. And Israel's providing the fuel because the fuel can be used by Hamas to light up their tunnels. We don't want them to do that. We want the fuel to be used for the hospitals. Is that a fair and accurate assessment?
Let me start with how the IDF has announced the current status of its operations. It has announced that its forces have circled Gaza City with the goal of eliminating Hamas's military infrastructure in the city. The IDF has also announced its intentions to create a humanitarian corridor for the safe evacuation of Palestinian civilians from northern Gaza to southern Gaza. There have also been plenty of reports about Hamas blocking the safe evacuation of civilians.
Chairman McCaul, there are a couple of refinements I'll offer to your comments about Rafah Gate and trucks and fuel. So I cannot stress how extraordinarily complex the operating environment is in that area of Rafah Gate. There is what they call the de facto authority, i.e. Hamas, on the other side. It's been a conflict zone at various points. We have, through Ambassador Satterfield and his team, through the efforts of our mission in Cairo, Jerusalem, and then, of course, people back here making calls, have been in a strenuous effort to keep Rafah Gate open. But the Egyptians have had a recognizably high degree of concern about insecurity there, given the parlous conditions on the other side. So it's been an open and closing sort of situation.
No, I know they've had quite a history. Egypt.
Yes, yes.
Gaza. Let me turn Secretary Stroll to these attacks on our soldiers and our troops in Syria and Iraq. And I applaud the administration's support for Israel and also the force posture with the carrier strike groups and the nuclear submarine. I am concerned that it took a while to respond, though. There have been 19 attacks. There was only one response, and it was after 19 attacks, I should say. So it took us, we had to wait until almost 20 attacks took place before we even came in to respond to protect our troops there. And since that time, there have been 20 more attacks. What are we doing to protect our troops in the region?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chairman. First of all, U.S. military strikes are not the only effort that the U.S. government is putting forward, both to deter further attacks and address the current attacks against us. That is why we increased posture and messaged very loudly about the capabilities that the U.S. military has projected into the region in less than 1 month. Number two, we are working in full partnership with the State Department diplomatically through every possible channel to pass messages about our desire not to see regional conflict, to de-escalate, that we are focused on supporting Israel, but do not seek either state or non-state actors to widen this conflict. And we have made it explicit to our partners who can pass messages to state and non-state actors.
Thank you. My time's running. Listen, I agree. Deterrence is going to be the key here to prevent escalation. We do not want to see Hezbollah get any more engaged than they already are with 100,000 rockets. We don't want to see that light up. And Iran, is basically they're tentacles of Iran, essentially. I want to turn to the human shield because I don't think a lot of people understand. They look at the TV and they see these innocent civilians, and it breaks our heart to see human beings, in such circumstances. But if you could explain, perhaps to me and the committee and those behind you, what Hamas does to endanger innocent civilians by using them and our hostages as human shields. For instance, there is the hospital known as Al-Shifa, that has gotten a lot of attention lately. However, as I understand it, Hamas has a terrorist infrastructure located in the hospital itself and underneath in the tunnels, putting innocent civilians in jeopardy and at risk, and the hostages as well. Would you comment on that?
The rules of international humanitarian law are clear. They apply to the Israel Defense Forces. They also apply to Hamas. One cannot deliberately target civilians or civilian objects. One cannot use civilians as human shields. Attacks cannot be indiscriminate. One cannot rape, torture, or mutilate. One cannot take hostages, and attacks cannot cause excessive loss of civilian life or damage to civilian objects in relation to their military advantage are prohibited. Hamas there is documented evidence. There is plenty of images out there. Some of it, Hamas has put out itself to praise its use of terror tunnels, its obfuscation of weapons and rockets inside civilian structures, including hospitals, mosques, and schools.
And my question to the two of you, last very quickly, would you say that Hamas is then, according to your testimony, in violation of international humanitarian law?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Secretary?
Absolutely.
Would you say that Hamas is also guilty of war crimes and genocide?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
I would caution those participating to not shout out. We appreciate peaceful protests, but we want to keep it peaceful. With that, Chair recognizes Ranking Member Mr. Meeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.